So I'm sure this happens to all of us, but have you ever wondered or worried about the correlation between how you feel after you eat something that maybe it wouldn't fit your macros like you wanted it to, or you missed that session at the gym, or when you were used to running on a regular basis, you didn't get that jog in the morning, and how it makes you feel mentally different, right? There's a connection there that you're like, man, I know I'm me, but for some odd reason, I don't feel like myself, and it's because I missed out on this. Well, that's not a coincidence. I do want to spend some time and talk about the connection between those two, the difference between mental and physical health, and the similarities between mental and physical health, because they are very related. They train each other. They feed on each other. You can't have one without the other. If you neglect one, it typically causes issues with the other. If you train your body, but then say you ignore your mind, eventually, your body will respond accordingly. So, right? But then if you work on your mindset, but then neglect your physical health, there's a foundation that you stand on that will also be neglected. So, we're going to spend a little bit of time about connecting the two, and NFE for All website and all the advice, the training, fitness, mental health advice that we give, we typically treat everything as one system. So everything's kind of connected as one system. So I want to spend some time breaking down mental and physical health, how they're connected. Discipline and motivation is both considered a resource, but discipline is more of the bridge than motivation. I know that might be a curveball for some of you. And daily, weekly actions, things that are recurring behaviors and actions, how it connects the two. Okay? So, first, I want to spend some time talking about the mind body loop. So, if somebody mentions the mind body loop, right? I know it feels like you're in the matrix, right? It's not a glitch in the matrix. What it really means is your mind influences your body influences your mind, and it's consistent. It's very, very consistent. If you don't have it that way, then it can cause issues, right? And you can't really hide from it. So this really isn't motivational talk. It's more of a physiology and psychology, a connection between the two, right? Because if you think about it, when you train, and most of us probably feel this way, you're not just stressing the muscle. Of course, you are stressing the muscle, but anyone that experiences pain from that, they know that it's a lot more than just stressing just the muscle, right? You're also teaching your nervous system how to handle stress and what to do when stress is at hand and it's trying to deal with that at the same time. You're proving to your brain that discomfort is survivable. I talked about in one of my earlier podcasts the connection between the limbic system and the neocortex. What you're doing is you're training using the neocortex. You're training the limbic system to, hey, it's okay. You're used to this stress. You can continue. Every rep is a signal to your mind. It says, hey, I can do hard things. I can do this in particular. My life is not in danger, and I'm going to be okay. Okay. Now, on the flip side, what it does do is chronic stress elevates cortisol. So that is going to make your cortisol levels go up in all facets. That usually is not a good thing, as we know, right? Elevated cortisol impairs recovery, sleep, digestion, immune function. Everything I just named there, not only does that have to do with physical health, but if you really think about it, it has to do with mental health as well. And poor recovery leads to poor training, fatigue, frustration. We all know what that feels like, even those of us that don't train very consistently. So that's a negative feedback loop. So the first one is a positive feedback loop, negative feedback loop on the latter. So just like a muscle memory exists, how you have muscle memory, stress memory exists as well, right? The body knows when it's undergoing some type of a stress, and it reacts accordingly. So you either train your system to adapt or you train it to break, one of the two. And you really can't have both. There's a healthy balance, right? So I want to spend a little bit more time talking about why discipline is the connector. I kind of mentioned that earlier. Because that is a connection between the two. So you hear a lot of people trying to fix mental health by thinking better. I'm just going to think better. I'm going to be more of a positive person, and they may not make the physical changes, right? That's incomplete. That's incomplete. That's only half of the equation. Mental strength is built through behavior, not affirmation, right? So behavior and consistency in actions, that's how you build mental strength. Setting up the atmosphere for yourself is how you build mental strength, right? Putting yourself in positions that you know that your mental strength is leveraged at its best. It's more about setting up the atmosphere. Discipline is where the mind and the body meet. So kind of think about it like this, right? If you were to go to the gym when you're tired, right? That's you don't want to do that. Again, that goes to the neocortex. I mentioned that in an earlier podcast. Eating well when it'd be easier not to. There's a level of comfort where, yeah, I don't need to eat that. But you force yourself to do that. Otherwise, that's discipline. Going to bed on time, it's hard for all of us, including myself, and doing the basics consistently. Yeah, I've said before, the more boring it is, that means you're probably doing something right. And it's odd to say that in that context, but that really is what it means. These are all mental reps, right? They're disguised as physical actions, right? But they're all mental reps, they're habits. So you don't have to think as hard or try as hard when you have mental reps that are set in play. Mental reps that begets physical action. So there's a connection to the two, right? Now, here's the key and the steps. You don't need to crush yourself, right? You don't need to destroy yourself in one particular session, right? Really, you just need to show up consistency and show up consistently. That's going to build confidence. That's going to stabilize your mental health. And ultimately, what it really does is it helps you build trust in yourself. So confidence through actions is going to be where you get most of your positive return. And the way to build that confidence is you just show up every single day, right? Every single day. And even if there's a lapse in some of the consistency, that's okay, because as long as you are there every day, even if you're not at 100%, that's what matters the most. And you can connect the dots between the two behaviors and how you physically feel. So where does the rubber meet the road, right? Because it really matters through action. We can talk all day on, hey, they're connected. Your mind and your body, the mind and the muscle are one. We can say all of that, but then to get practical, right? If you look at things as non-negotiable on both sides of the equation for your mind and for your body, your mind and your muscle, what action is necessary? Well, number one would be move every day, even on rest days. Some type of movement. Movement is medicine. It doesn't have to be intense. Walking, mobility work, like cardio, stretching, any of that, and you do it every single day. A few things that's going to do is improve blood flow to the brain, your neurotransmitter balance, and mood regulation. We all feel better. I don't care what anybody says. After you do it, you'll feel better. So people gripe and complain about, no, I'd much rather be sitting down watching Netflix and eating pizza. I got to catch back up on Stranger Things. Well, you can take 20 minutes, which is less than an episode of Stranger Things, to stay active and to move. It's like active recovery for your mind as well, right? Your body and your mind. Just like skipping leg day weakens your legs eventually and your physique, skipping movement weakens your mental baseline also. The second thing is you want to think of on daily action would be eating for stability and not for aesthetics. And here I am, a professional natural bodybuilder saying this, but food impacts mood more than people realize. Honestly, could say that food impacts mood more than your physical. I think it's your mood first, and the physical attributes that come with a deficit or increased in that follow. So you usually know before. Blood sugar swings usually equals mood swings, and consistent meals with adequate protein, food, carbs, everything you need, healthy fats. That's going to help stabilize energy, focus, emotional regulation. Again, where the rubber meets the road, you look at the physical action of eating the right foods. You look at the mental action of getting a return on investment through energy, focus, emotional regulation, right? You wouldn't randomly change macros daily in prep, right? And expect consistency. So why would it happen in regular life? You know, think about that. If you are getting prepared for a competition or even not in the bodybuilding world, you've got a marathon run that you're enrolling in, or you have a Tough Mudder, of which I've never done, but you got a Tough Mudder you might be getting enlisted in, and if it's irregular on your intake and food, and then you're going to see the effects of that, right? And that your results will not be as consistent if you weren't as consistent on the way up. So why would you do it on everyday life? Say there's no prep. You don't want to do it in everyday life either, because it'll have the same effect, right? So mental health thrives on predictability and nourishment, nourishing your body and your mind. Third thing would be controlling your inputs. Brain is always training, whether you mean to or not. It's always training, it's always learning. So you always want to ask yourself, hey, what am I consuming every day? Right? What am I consuming every day? It is no different than if you eat pizza and breadsticks and Coca Cola every single day. Eventually, your body will physically feel the difference, and it's going to try to accommodate for the intake, right? So, you'll gain more fat. That's just part of it, right? It's no different if your cortisol levels are elevated from watching news every single day, scrolling on Facebook, Instagram, whatever your poison is that you choose. The effect on your mind will be the same. So, news, drama, comparison, negativity, that sort of thing, you'll see an effect, right? Again, another comparison, you wouldn't blast, junk volume for muscle growth, right? You wouldn't do, one set and 5 reps for every single muscle group. Well, you don't want to do the same for your mental health either, you know. So you want to curate your music, podcasts, and if you for all podcasts, I think that's a good choice. Conversations and good positive conversations, and social media time. You want to make sure all those things are in a positive light that really keeps you aligned with what you want to accomplish mentally, right? You want to treat it the same way your mental environment is as you would your recovery after you hit the weight room or you do some heavy duty cardio. Now, here's one of my favorites, and it can be something at a small scale or a large scale. It doesn't have to be big. Do one hard thing daily. One hard thing. It could be anything, right? It could be cold exposure, and that's what I do. I take a 30 to 45-second cold shower. That's not a lot. Don't make fun of me, you cold plunge fanatics, okay? But do one hard thing daily. A hard workout, a difficult conversation, finishing a task that you've been avoiding, any of those would allocate as being something that could be a very valuable benefit, okay? One hard thing. And I think the important thing is if you do one hard activity, then it's going to help you realize that everything else is actually not so difficult, you know? I mean, there's a chance that when you do that one activity, and it's kind of like that when I do my cold showers, this is probably the hardest thing that I'll do today, So because this is going to be the hardest thing that I do today, I think I'll be all right for the rest of the day. I may cross a path of something that's going to be challenging, but I think this one here is going to take the cake, right? And if not, then hey, tomorrow it'll be the hardest thing that you do because you do it every day, right? So this builds mental callus, and it's just like when you are working out, you get the resilience when it comes to soreness and that sort of thing. It's very similar. So that's one of my most important tips. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and talk about some weekly practices that help reinforce the system. And then we talked about the daily stuff earlier. The first thing I would like to reflect on is a weekly reflection, right? Kind of like a check-in, not a beat down, right? On man, this I did a terrible job this week sticking to my plan. No, this is more of a check-in. So you ask yourself what worked this week, what didn't, where did I drift, what's the one adjustment that I did make or that I should make. No emotion, no judgment. Keep it very objective, and that's both with your mental and physical health things that you've done. Just like a coach reviewing film, and athlete spiraling out of, a bad performance. There's a contrast between the two. You want to think almost externally, like you're looking at yourself on how good of a job or how much of an improvement that you have or need to make going forward. Reflection keeps the mind grounded, keeps the body aligned. It's very important to do it. Schedule recovery on purpose, right? This is both mental and physical. Recovery isn't laziness. And I think that's sometimes where we are a little confused is we look at recovery or taking a break or a deload week. And those who don't know, deload is just basically put in a nutshell, lifting a lighter amount of load and weights, not as much volume. And it's a strategy. It is not laziness. And anybody that has reverse dieted before, you can probably tell you this. It takes a lot of effort and really discipline, right? Sleep, downtime, breathe work, low stimulation activities. They rest your nervous system. Fried nervous system can't build muscle or resilience. And remember, you don't grow during the workout, right? During the workout is not when you grow. It's going to be after, and you adapt after, right? Stress heals after the fact, right? You don't heal during stress. So you just have to keep that in mind. That's part of the game and part of the battle. Last but not least, environment matters, right? Environment matters. And what I mean by that is not only who you surround yourself with, but the landscape that you paint for yourself on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, on a yearly basis, right? Habits you can control, things that you set up to do on a regular basis, you can control, your crowd and people you surround yourself with. For the most part, we can control that. And all those are things that can help determine the environment that you're in. You'll hear me say that, the less disciplined you are, look at your environment because that may be a byproduct. And you don't have to be as disciplined when you have an environment that doesn't require it. So it's important to normalize effort by surrounding yourself with like minded individuals. That reduces mental noise and it helps reinforce your identity because you're on the same page with them. So that arguably is one of the most important factors to stay consistent, even in times of weakness. Okay, so let's summarize to bring it home. Mental health isn't separate from physical health. It's not weaker. It's not optional. It's trained, right? So it's trained just the same. It's just trained in a slight different way, and that's how they connect. Every walk, rep, meal, every boundary that you set, those are votes for your body and your mind. So votes for them to build a connection with each other. They work together, and you can't really have one without the other. So it's important not to chase perfection. You chase alignment. So being on the same page with your mental and physical health, I think that it has more long-term results. Perfection is impossible. We all know that. You have a strong body, a stable mind, disciplined actions. Those tend to go together and run together, right? When both systems work together, life gets lighter. It doesn't get as difficult. Even when it is difficult, your body and your mind work together. Okay? So hopefully this helped you. And I'm looking forward to the next one. But ask yourself, is your body and your mind aligned? Are they on the same page? And if they aren't, what will it take to have that level of confidence for yourself to where you feel like that they are?